Let's talk about Peru. It's a country that immediately brings to mind incredible images, right? Ancient wonders, amazing food. But right now, in 2025, it's also a nation defined by a really startling contradiction. It's a place of huge global success, literally existing right next to a state of deep, deep crisis. Okay, just to see what I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got Lima, the absolute gastronomic capital of the Americas. Its restaurant Mido was just named the best in the entire world, an incredible achievement. And on the other side, that exact same city, Lima, is under a state of emergency. The military is literally in the streets trying to deal with a massive surge in organized crime. So how does that even work? How can one country be a celebrated cultural powerhouse and, at the very same time, have its own government struggling just to keep basic order? Well, that's the Peruvian paradox we're going to unpack right now. To really get a handle on Peru, you have to start with its geography. And I don't mean just as a backdrop. In Peru, the land itself is an active force. It has literally carved the nation into completely separate and very different worlds. You see, the country is split vertically into three radically different regions. You've got the costa, that's the long, dry desert coast where almost everybody lives. Then there's the Sierra, the massive Andes Mountains, which are kind of like the country's water tower. And finally, the selva, the enormous Amazon rainforest that covers more than half the country but has almost no people. And this is where that geographic split really hits home. Just look at how lopsided the population is. It's wild. A full 30% of the entire country lives in just one city, Lima, on the coast. So you get this hyper-centralized country where the state is almost entirely focused on the capital, and huge parts of the rest of the nation feel completely disconnected. So you've got this divided land, and history, well, it didn't really bring things together. In fact, for centuries, it just reinforced those divisions through empire, conquest, and a constant struggle over what it even means to be Peru. You can really break down Peru's story into three big acts. First, you have the incredibly sophisticated Inca Empire, which was built around this idea of social reciprocity. Everyone contributes and everyone is taken care of. Then that's completely shattered by the Spanish conquest, which violently remade society for just one goal: pulling silver out of the ground. And ever since, the modern republic has been struggling with the ghosts of both of those pasts. And if you want to understand the deep roots of today's conflicts, you have to look at how the Spanish twisted the Inca systems. Take the mita. For the Inca, this was a labor tax. You worked for the state, but it was a two-way street. The state guaranteed your food and your security. It was a system of reciprocity. The Spanish came, kept the name, but turned it into a brutal, often lethal, system of forced labor in the mines. They took the obligation, but they totally destroyed the reciprocity. And that deep-seated distrust, that feeling of having your resources taken with nothing in return, it echoes directly in today's bitter fights over mining. And not surprisingly, that historical theme of resource extraction is front and center in Peru's modern economy. It's the very thing that fuels its growth, but it's also a constant source of deep social conflict. I mean, you really can't overstate how much mining dominates Peru's economy. Just look at that number. A whopping 60% of the country's total export revenues come from mining. As the world's #2 copper producer, Peru is a really critical player in the whole global shift to green energy. But being so dependent on one thing creates massive tension. Right now, there's this huge debate over a use it or lose it policy. The government wants to take back mining rates for land that's just sitting there, to force companies to start producing. But the industry's pushing back, saying, whoa, hold on. It can take up to 40 years to go from finding a deposit to actually building a mine. The big risk here is that this kind of uncertainty could scare off all the investment Peru needs to take advantage of today's sky-high copper prices. And while the formal industry is busy debating policy, a massive shadow economy is absolutely booming. In 2024 alone, illegal gold exports were worth $6.8 billion. We're talking about an illicit trade that's now as big as drug trafficking, and it's fueling environmental destruction and empowering all sorts of criminal networks. And this brings us right to the most urgent problem in Peru's paradox, the security crisis. You see, when your state institutions are weak and you have a massive illegal economy pumping out billions of dollars, organized crime doesn't just grow, it flourishes. And this is where it gets really real for people's daily lives. For the majority of Peruvians, 59%, the fear of crime is now a bigger worry than the economy. It's a bigger worry than putting food on the table. You've got these transnational gangs, like the infamous Tren de Arauaga, who are into widespread extortion, hitting up everyone from corner store owners to taxi drivers. And it just creates this climate of constant fear. So the government's response has been this ongoing state of emergency. They've suspended some constitutional rights, which allows the police and military to conduct raids without warrants. But, a lot of security analysts are pretty skeptical. They argue that these are just band-aid solutions. They don't address the root causes. And they point out that these same tactics have failed before because they do nothing to fix the weak institutions that let crime thrive in the first place. And this right here is the heart of the problem. It's what experts call the institutional void. Just look at these public trust numbers. Only 19% of Peruvians are satisfied with the justice system. That's a near total collapse of faith. And when people have zero confidence that the police or the courts can protect them, criminal organizations are more than happy to step in and fill that power vacuum. Which brings us right back to where we started, back to this central paradox. Peru is a nation of incredible resilience. Its people, its culture, they thrive, often in spite of a state that remains frustratingly fragile. And it's so important to remember that the country's strengths are just massive. It has the minerals that the entire world needs for the green energy transition. It has a cultural brand, the food, the tourism, that's a global powerhouse. And somehow, its core economy has proven to be incredibly stable, weathering one political storm after another. This really points to a fundamental truth. The society itself is incredibly strong. And that leaves us with the ultimate question for Peru's future, doesn't it? The country has proven that its people, its culture, and its resources are absolutely world-class. The challenge now is whether it can finally build a government and institutions that are worthy of them. Can the Peruvian state ever become as strong and as sophisticated as the Peruvian nation?